So I've mentioned recently that I've had some issues with my stove. For about a year and a half now, I've been using this Coleman Powerpack stove. It has a lot of great features that I really like, but it also has some features that I don't like, and I was talking about it recently because it has been shooting flames basically higher than what you can see on the screen here. So that means that the flames would start to kiss the ceiling of the van at certain times. I've been really looking for a stove that I thought would be worthy of spending money on and replacing this. But I know that it's time to get rid of this just because it has been an old fireball that has been shooting flames just at the drop of a hat. And I think for safety's sake, I need to get rid of it. For ease of use, I've been reluctant to get rid of it. But one of the things that I've liked about this stove is that it has this kind of really wide base to it, and the stove is fairly flat, which means you don't have to fiddle around setting something down on top of it and being worried about it's going to tip over. It's very stable. And whatever you put on it ends up being very stable because of these kind of unusual pot and pan supports that it has. So that's a great feature about the stove. I also like that it runs off of propane. I have a bulk propane tank that I hook up the stove to. Just saves money down the road. I don't like buying the little green bottles. They're very expensive. So that's the great plus about the stove. The minus about these Coleman Powerpack stoves is that they're very difficult to adjust. They don't want to run a very low simmer. So if you're cooking something like rice or just something that you want to slow cook, they don't do a very good job of that. But for fast cooking, high heat cooking, they work great. The one other thing about it is it doesn't have a striker for it, so it doesn't start the flame automatically. You know, you turn on the gas, and then you have to either have a match or one of these lighters. And I like these just to keep my hands away from the flame. And I had found this one made by Duraflame that doesn't have the little child safety lock on it. You just click and it starts. Although, as you can see, this one doesn't start quite so easy when you click it. Started that on the third or fourth time. Seems like most of these things are not very well made. I think I've bought 8 of these in the short time I've been living in the van. And I think that's kind of excessive. The one that I had before this actually did last well, and so I did buy another one when I was able to find one. These are really hard to find. I found this one at Target, but I know not all Target stores carry them. But it is kind of a pain that whenever you go to start your stove, you either have to grab a lighter or a match. And so that was one of the other things that I didn't like about this stove. So the new stove has come in. I'm going to pick it up and set it up and just do a little quick review on it here next. All right, here it is, the new stove made by a company called Gas One. I really looked around and explored all the options of all the different stoves. This one obviously is a dual fuel stove, so you've probably seen this style of stove before. Normally this style has a little trap door that a little butane canister goes in the side there. This stove is designed to run either on those, or they give you this little hose and regulator assembly so you can hook it up to either a green canister, propane canister, or a bigger propane canister. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't have any intention of using this with butane. I think butane works perfectly well, but those little canisters are insanely expensive and also just really wasteful. So I think I mentioned this before, but the way I've kept this stove kind of fastened to my table here to keep it from sliding around as I drive is I've just stuck some magnets up on the feet. So I had them super glued onto the bottom of the feet, one in each corner. And then I had set this little tabletop up here. Obviously it's a just a sheet pan that I had cut down to size, and I'd made sure that this sheet pan is magnetic. So if you can hear that. So that way the magnets on the feet of the stove would stick to the metal of this sheet pan. I had envisioned that this sheet pan would be would kind of help set the stove at an angle. If I was parked at kind of a severe angle, I could kind of set it up and move the stove so that the stove would be a little more level. Also, I thought it'd be nice to be able to move this up and out of the way. But I don't really use it that way because I don't find that is terribly useful. Probably a good idea. It just didn't really work out so well. But I do like that it's magnetic because that way I can keep the stove out all the time without having to worry about it sliding around, as long as I've got the magnets on the feet. So I'm going to set up the new stove with some magnets on the feet now. So I managed to pry the magnets off of the old stove, and I am repurposing them by Gorilla gluing them onto the feet of the new stove here. All right, so I've got it in. I've done a little testing with it, and I can say that I am very happy with this stove. Some of the differences with this stove versus the Coleman, this was a little bit more expensive of a stove. This stove was about $60. The Coleman Powerpack, I believe, is about $40. I was kind of holding off buying a stove because that Coleman really did well for me. Other than it turning into a fireball on occasion here in the last few months, it has actually worked really well. There's a few differences, obviously, with this stove versus the Coleman. One of the things that I never liked about the Coleman was if I wanted to use it outside, it didn't have any kind of wind guard. This one does. It has a wind guard that's built into the top frame here. So I don't know how well that works yet because it's been raining all day. It's been raining all week, pretty much. So I didn't get a chance to test it today. But I think as soon as the weather clears up, I'm gonna get it outside and try to use it outside. The other thing about this one is that it has its own igniter on it. So all I've got to do is turn it over and it fires itself up. And you can see from the size of that flame, this one is actually quite a bit more powerful than the Coleman. The Coleman, I think, was about a 7,500 BTU stove. This stove is a 15,000 BTU stove. I was a little bit worried that it being 15,000 BTU, it wouldn't simmer very well, but it does seem to simmer pretty well, at least much better than the Coleman did. I'm happy with the stove. It seems to be working well. I've got it hooked up to my bulk propane tank, and I've just done some testing with it so far, but I'm very, very happy with it. I think it was definitely the right stove. Probably should have upgraded months ago, but like I said, that Coleman has served me well for, the year and a half or so that I've had it. So not a bad stove, I don't think, but I do think that this is a better stove. And like I said, as the weather gets better and I can actually use it outside, and as I get to use it a little bit more, I'll give you some updates on if I think it was worth the extra money. But so far, I think it is. So I think it's about coffee time. So I'm going to make a cup. And thanks for watching, everybody. Questions or comments, leave them below. And I hope you have a great weekend.